Emma Martinez had always been the kind of kid who noticed things others missed. The way her teacher's smile didn't reach her eyes when she was having a bad day, or how her golden retriever, Biscuit, limped slightly on his left paw 3 days before anyone else saw it and took him to the vet. She noticed when her best friend Maya was upset even when Maya swore she was fine, and she could tell when her mother had been crying even if she'd washed her face and put on fresh makeup. At 12 years old, she'd learned this trait from her father, FBI Special Agent David Martinez, who'd spent countless dinners turning ordinary observations into teaching moments. They'd play a game at restaurants, people watching, her dad called it, though her mom called it making your daughter paranoid. "Emma, look at that man at table 6, he'd whisper over his spaghetti. "See how he keeps checking the exits? That's situational awareness. He's probably former military or law enforcement. Notice how he chose the seat facing the door. Or watch that couple by the window. See how she keeps looking at her phone but angles it away from him. And he's doing the same thing. They're both hiding something." Emma's mother, Rosa, would kick him under the table. "David, she's 12. Let her be a kid." But Emma loved it. Loved feeling like she understood a secret language of human behavior that most people missed. Her father never made her feel like a kid when they played this game. He talked to her like a fellow investigator, like someone whose observations mattered. The morning of the flight, her father had driven her to Denver International Airport at dawn, the Colorado sky still purple and orange with sunrise. Emma's stomach had been a knot of excitement and nervousness. This was her first time flying alone, her grandmother's birthday surprise trip to Florida, just the two of them, while her parents stayed home for her dad's big work presentation. "You remember what we talked about?" her father asked as they pulled up to the departures terminal, his hands tight on the steering wheel. "Dad, I've got this. The gate agent will walk me on, the flight attendant will check on me, Grandma will meet me at the gate in Orlando. I'm not 5. I know. He turned to face her, and Emma saw something in his eyes she didn't usually see: worry. Real worry, not the teaching moment kind. "I just mean, keep your eyes open, okay? Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, tell an adult." "I know, Dad." Emma rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Not just any adult, a flight attendant, a pilot, security, someone official. He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "Emma, I need you to remember something, okay? Just in case." "You're freaking me out." "Good, a little healthy paranoia keeps you safe." He pulled out his phone and showed her a note he'd typed. "This is an old code from aviation security. Most people don't use it anymore, but some older flight attendants might still know it. If you ever, and I mean ever, feel like there's a real threat on a plane, you say you need to see Mr. Phillip. Okay." Emma read the note. Mr. Phillip equals code for hijacking terrorist threat, from old aviation phonetic alphabet. P for Philip, P for problem. "Dad, this is crazy. Nothing's going to happen on a 2-hour flight to Florida." 4-hour flight, and you're right, probably nothing will happen, but I want you to have every tool. He cupped her face in his hands the way he had when she was little. "You're smart, Emma. You notice things. That's a gift. Don't ever doubt what you see." Now, 3 hours later, Emma sat in seat 9B of Flight 447, the bright yellow unaccompanied minor, lanyard around her neck making her feel both important and embarrassed. The Boeing 737 was packed, every single seat filled with spring break travelers, families with excited children wearing Mickey Mouse ears, college students already half asleep with earbuds in, business travelers typing urgently on laptops before the door closed. Sarah Chen, a flight attendant who looked like she was in her 50s with perfectly styled black hair and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled, had already checked on Emma 3 times. "Your grandmother is going to be so excited to see you," Sarah said warmly, handing Emma an extra packet of cookies and a bottle of water. "First time flying alone?" "Yes, ma'am." "You're going to do great. I'm right here if you need anything, okay? Anything at all, you just press that call button." Sarah pointed to the button overhead, then leaned in conspiratorially. And between you and me, the cookies in first class are better. I'll sneak you some once we're in the air. Emma grinned, thank you. As Sarah moved down the aisle, Emma pulled out her sketchbook, a birthday present from her grandmother, spiral-bound with thick paper perfect for colored pencils. She'd been planning this drawing for weeks, a portrait of Biscuit wearing a birthday hat for Grandma's fridge. She arranged her pencils in the seat pocket in front of her, trying to ignore the flutter of nervousness in her stomach. Flying alone. She was doing this. She was 12 years old and flying across the country by herself like it was no big deal. The seat next to her, 9A, was still empty. Emma hoped it would stay that way, give her room to spread out, but just as the flight attendants were preparing to close the cabin door, a man came rushing down the aisle. He was breathing hard like he'd been running. Mid-30s, Emma guessed, with dark hair that needed cutting and a thick winter jacket that seemed too warm for the cabin. He had a black duffel bag clutched to his chest with both arms, like someone carrying a baby, and when his eyes scanned the row numbers, there was something wild in them. "Excuse me," he muttered, not quite making eye contact as he gestured to seat 9A, "That's me." Emma stood up to let him pass, pressing herself against the seat in front of her. As he squeezed by, she smelled it, that sharp, acrid smell of nervous sweat mixed with something else, something chemical that reminded her of the science lab at school when they did experiments with acids. The man dropped into seat 9A with a heavy thud that shook Emma's armrest. He shoved the duffel bag under the seat in front of him, but kept one hand on it, fingers gripping the strap so tightly his knuckles went white. Emma sat back down and opened her sketchbook, trying not to stare. She started sketching Biscuit's ears, the way they flopped when he was happy, but she couldn't quite focus. Something about the man beside her felt off. She glanced sideways. His hands were shaking as he buckled his seatbelt. Not just a little tremor, a full-body shake that made the buckle click against itself 3 times before he got it latched. Sweat was already beading on his forehead, darkening his hairline. First-time flyer, Emma thought, probably just scared. But her father's voice whispered in her head, "Trust your gut, Emma. If something feels wrong, it usually is." Emma looked down at her sketch of Biscuit and tried to ignore the feeling creeping up her spine, that cold, prickly sensation that something was very, very wrong. She had no idea that in exactly 42 minutes, her father's training would stop being a game and become the only thing standing between 189 people and death. She had no idea that the nervous man beside her was carrying enough explosives to blow a hole in the sky. And she definitely had no idea that she was about to become the youngest person in history to use a code word that would make a pilot dive a plane toward the ground and save everyone on board. For now, Emma Martinez was just a 12-year-old girl drawing a dog in a birthday hat, flying to see her grandmother, sitting in seat 9B, and trying not to notice the man in 9A whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. But she noticed. She always noticed. And this time, noticing would change everything. Michael Peterson dropped into seat 9A with a heavy thud, and Emma immediately smelled it, sharp, acrid sweat mixed with something chemical she couldn't identify. It wasn't body odor exactly. It was sharper, more pungent, like the smell that hung in the air after her dad cleaned his service weapon with solvent. The man was in his mid-30s, wearing a thick North Face jacket despite the warm cabin temperature, and his hands trembled as he buckled his seatbelt with fumbling fingers that took 3 attempts to catch the clasp. Emma tried to focus on her drawing, sketching Biscuit's floppy ears with careful strokes, but her peripheral vision kept catching movement, the man's knee bouncing rapidly, making both their armrests vibrate. His breathing was quick and shallow, almost panting, like he'd just run a marathon. Be nice, Emma reminded herself. Mom always says to be kind to nervous flyers. She glanced over with what she hoped was a friendly smile. First time flying. The man's head snapped toward her so fast it made Emma flinch. His eyes were wide and glassy, the pupils dilated so large they almost swallowed the brown of his irises. For a moment, he just stared at her, and Emma saw something in his gaze that made her stomach drop, not anger exactly, but a kind of desperate, cornered intensity. "What? No, mind your business, kid." His voice cracked on the last word, breaking into a higher register. Emma's face flushed hot with embarrassment. "Sorry, I just thought." "Well, don't think." He clutched the black duffel bag against his chest like a child with a teddy bear, his knuckles white from gripping it so hard. Just leave me alone." Emma turned away, her cheeks burning. She hunched over her sketchbook, but the lines of Biscuit's face came out wrong now, too harsh, the friendly dog looking more like he was snarling. She erased them roughly, the pink eraser leaving smudges across the page. "Jerk," she thought, "I was just being polite." But even as she tried to focus on her drawing, she couldn't help noticing things. It was like her brain had a separate processor running in the background, cataloging details without her permission. The man kept checking his phone, screen on, screen off, screen on, even though the flight attendant had just announced all devices needed to be in airplane mode. Each time he looked at it, his breathing would speed up, his chest rising and falling rapidly beneath that too-warm jacket. His leg bounced so violently it shook their shared armrest, a constant nervous rhythm that Emma could feel through the seat. She counted, 47 bounces in 1 minute, then 52 in the next. And the bag. He never let go of the bag. Even as the plane began taxiing toward the runway, even as other passengers stuffed their carry-ons into the overhead compartments or slid them under the seats in front of them, this man held his duffel bag against his chest with both arms, like it might escape if he loosened his grip. Emma sketched a line that was supposed to be Biscuit's collar but came out shaky. Her hand was trembling now too, but for a different reason. She thought about what her father had taught her at a cookout last summer when her uncle had asked about his work. They'd been standing by the grill, and her dad had been flipping burgers, but his voice had gone serious. "You know what most people don't understand about threats," he'd said. "They think terrorists look scary like movie villains, but the reality, they look like everyone else. They're sweating because they're terrified. They're nervous because they know what they're about to do. Their hands shake because they're human beings committing to something monstrous." Emma had laughed it off then, stealing a chip from the bowl. "Dad, you're making Uncle Rick nervous." But her father hadn't smiled. "I'm serious, Emma. Bombers are often overdressed to conceal devices. They guard their bags obsessively. They sweat profusely even in cool environments. They exhibit extreme nervousness that seems disproportionate to the situation. They—" "David," her mother had interrupted, touching his arm, "not at the barbecue." Now, as the plane's engines roared to life and Flight 447 began its acceleration down the runway, Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. She stole another glance at the man beside her. Overdressed, check. The jacket was heavy winter gear, completely inappropriate for a flight to Florida in March. Guarding his bag obsessively, check. His arms were locked around it like steel bands. Sweating profusely, check. Dark patches had formed under his arms and across his back, visible even through the thick jacket. Extreme nervousness, check, check, check. "Stop it," Emma commanded herself. "You're being paranoid. Dad's stories are getting in your head. This is just a scared guy on a plane. Maybe he has anxiety. Maybe he's claustrophobic. Maybe he's going to a funeral and he's upset. There are a million normal explanations." The plane lifted off the ground, that stomach-dropping sensation of leaving Earth behind. A few passengers gasped. A baby cried. And the man beside Emma whispered something so quietly she almost missed it. "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me." Emma's pencil froze on the page. Maybe he's religious, she thought desperately. Lots of people pray during takeoff. It doesn't mean anything. But when his jacket shifted as he adjusted his grip on the bag, Emma saw it. Just for a second, just a glimpse before he pulled the jacket closed again. A green wire, no thicker than a phone charger cable, snaking from the bag's partially open zipper. Emma's mouth went dry. Her drawing of Biscuit blurred as her eyes lost focus. It's just electronics, she told herself. Everyone travels with chargers and cables. It doesn't mean anything. You're being crazy. You're going to feel so stupid when you realize you freaked out over nothing. But her father's voice wouldn't stop echoing in her head. Trust your gut, Emma. If something feels wrong, it usually is. The plane climbed higher, the ground falling away beneath them. Denver spread out below like a toy city, the Rocky Mountains majestic in the distance. It was beautiful. Emma should have been excited, should have been pressing her face to the window taking it all in. Instead, she sat frozen, her colored pencils forgotten in her lap, watching the man beside her from the corner of her eye as he clutched his duffel bag and whispered prayers or apologies. Emma couldn't tell which, into the recycled air of row 9. The flight attendant's voice came over the intercom, cheerful and professional. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Flight attendants, you may begin beverage service. 35,000 feet, 7 miles high. If something happened up here, if something went wrong. Emma swallowed hard and tried to focus on her drawing, but her hands were shaking too badly now. She put the pencil down before she tore the paper. You're overreacting, she told herself one more time. Nothing is wrong, everything is fine. But deep in her gut, in that place where instinct lives before logic can talk you out of it, Emma Martinez knew the truth. Something was very, very wrong with the man in seat 9A. And she had no idea what to do about it. As the flight continued over the patchwork farmlands of eastern Colorado, Emma tried every trick she knew to calm herself down. She counted backwards from 100. She took deep breaths the way her mom had taught her for test anxiety. She even tried the stupid meditation thing her guidance counselor had shown her. Picture yourself in a peaceful place. But there was nothing peaceful about row 9. 20 minutes into the flight, the man made his first trip to the bathroom. Emma watched him unbuckle his seatbelt with trembling fingers, still gripping the duffel bag against his chest with his other arm. He stood in the aisle, swaying slightly as he found his balance, and for just a moment, Emma thought maybe he was going to leave the bag behind. Maybe she'd see it was nothing. Maybe there'd be a laptop inside, or camera equipment, or something completely innocent that would make her laugh at her own paranoia. But no, he took the bag with him. Emma craned her neck to watch him shuffle down the aisle toward the rear lavatory, the black duffel clutched to his chest like it contained something precious. Or dangerous. Several passengers had to shift their legs to let him pass, and one businessman gave him an annoyed look. Who takes their bag to the bathroom? Emma pulled out her phone and checked the time. 11:34 a.m. She made a mental note, though she wasn't sure why. It just seemed important to remember details, the way her father always did. The man disappeared into the lavatory and Emma stared at the occupied sign that clicked into place. She counted. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. What was he doing in there for so long? The line was forming behind the door, a mom with a squirming toddler, a college-age guy shifting impatiently from foot to foot. 4 minutes, 5, 6. The college guy knocked on the door. Hey, you okay in there? No response, just the sound of running water. 7 minutes. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She gripped her armrests, her knuckles going white just like his had been. What if he's assembling something in there? What if he's... Stop it, you're losing your mind. At minute 7 and 34 seconds, Emma was still counting. The door clicked open. The man emerged, his face somehow paler than before, sweat now running in visible streams down his temples. His shirt collar was dark with moisture. The duffel bag was still in his arms, but he held it differently now, more carefully, like it might break, or like it might explode. He shuffled back down the aisle, and Emma quickly looked down at her sketchbook, pretending to be absorbed in her drawing. But she felt him slide back into seat 9A, felt the seat dip with his weight, smelled that chemical scent even stronger now, sharp and bitter, almost like ammonia mixed with something sweet that made her eyes water. The man shoved the bag under the seat in front of him this time, but kept one hand on it constantly, his fingers drumming against the black nylon in a nervous rhythm. Tap, 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 over and over and over. Emma tried to return to drawing Biscuit, but the dog on her page looked wrong, distorted, nothing like her happy golden retriever. She gave up and just stared out the window, watching clouds drift past, trying to think about anything else. Below them, the landscape had changed from mountains to plains, Kansas, maybe, or Nebraska. Endless flat farmland divided into perfect squares, irrigation circles making crop patterns that looked like alien designs from up here. It was hypnotic, peaceful. Emma wanted to lose herself in it. Then came the turbulence. Without warning, the plane hit an air pocket and dropped, that terrible stomach-lurching sensation like the bottom falling out of an elevator. Passengers gasped. Someone shrieked. Overhead compartments rattled. The plane bounced once, twice, then settled back into smooth air. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've hit a little rough air." The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and practiced. "Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." But Emma wasn't listening to the captain. She was listening to the man beside her. He had grabbed the duffel bag with both hands, yanking it back onto his lap, his eyes squeezed shut so tightly his whole face scrunched up. And he was whispering urgently, desperately, "Not yet, not yet, please not yet, 15 more minutes, not yet, not yet." Emma's blood turned to ice water in her veins. 15 more minutes until what? She looked at her phone, 11:47 a.m. She did the math with numb fingers. 15 minutes from now would be 12:02 p.m. What happened at 12:02? Why did that matter? What was he counting down to? The man's eyes snapped open and caught Emma staring at him. For one terrible, endless moment, their eyes locked across the narrow space of their shared armrest. Emma saw something in his gaze that would haunt her dreams for months, a mixture of determination and regret, conviction and sorrow, the look of someone who had made a terrible decision and couldn't turn back. "Stop looking at me," he hissed, his voice low and venomous. Emma jerked her head away, her heart hammering. She stared down at her sketchbook, at poor Biscuit's ruined portrait, and felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. Not sad tears, fear tears. "This is real," she thought. "Oh God, this is actually real. I'm not being paranoid. Something is wrong. Something is really, really wrong." She thought about the green wire she'd seen, the bathroom trip with the bag, the constant sweating and nervousness, the muttered prayers or apologies, and now this. Not yet, and 15 more minutes, and that look in his eyes that said he was resigned to something terrible. Emma's mind raced through her options like a frantic computer, trying to solve an impossible equation. She could press the call button right now, ask the flight attendant to come over, but the man would hear. He was right next to her. He'd know she was reporting him. And if she was right, if he really did have something dangerous in that bag, what would he do if he thought she'd exposed him? She could unbuckle and walk to the bathroom herself, then quietly tell a flight attendant what she'd observed. But would they believe a 12-year-old with an overactive imagination? And what if he did something while she was gone? What if leaving her seat was the trigger for whatever he had planned? She could write a note and try to pass it to someone. But who? How? Everyone around her was absorbed in their own activities. The businessman across the aisle was asleep. The mom behind her was dealing with crying twins. The college students had their headphones in. Emma looked around the cabin with new eyes, really seeing the people for the first time. Row 11, a young couple on their honeymoon holding hands, the woman's new wedding ring catching the overhead light. Row 14, a businessman in an expensive suit, probably heading to a meeting. Row 6, a family with 3 children, the youngest maybe 4 years old, coloring in a Disney princess book. 189 people. That's what the safety card in the seat pocket said. Capacity, 189 passengers and crew. 189 people who had no idea that a 12-year-old girl in row 9 was trying to decide if she was crazy, or if she was the only thing standing between them and disaster. Emma's hands were shaking so badly now she had to sit on them. She forced herself to breathe slowly, in through her nose, out through her mouth, the way her dad had taught her when she got overwhelmed. Think, she commanded herself. Dad prepared you for this. He wouldn't have taught you all that stuff if he didn't think you could handle it. What did he say? What exactly did he say? She closed her eyes and tried to remember that morning, just 4 hours ago, that felt like a lifetime. Her father's face, serious and worried, showing her his phone. The code he'd made her memorize. Mr. Phillip. It was absurd. It was something from spy movies from a different era. Would it even work? Would anyone even know what it meant? But it was the only tool she had. The only way to communicate a threat without alerting the man beside her, without causing panic, without making things worse. Emma opened her eyes and looked at the man in 9A one more time. He was staring straight ahead now, his jaw clenched, one hand still on the duffel bag. His lips moved silently, counting or praying. Emma couldn't tell which. She checked her phone again. 11:52 a.m. If his 15-minute countdown was accurate, whatever he had planned would happen at 12:02 p.m. That was 10 minutes away. 10 minutes to decide if she was brave enough to speak up, or if she'd spend the rest of her life wondering if she could have saved everyone and chose to stay silent instead. 10 minutes to choose between looking crazy and possibly saving lives. Emma's throat was so dry she could barely swallow. Her hands were clammy with sweat. Every instinct in her 12-year-old body screamed at her to just be quiet, to not make waves, to let the adults handle it. But her father's voice cut through the fear. The worst mistakes aren't the ones where you act and you're wrong. The worst mistakes are when you do nothing and you're right. Sarah Chen appeared at the front of the cabin with the beverage cart, beginning her service from first class. Emma watched her move slowly down the aisle, row by row, offering drinks and snacks with that professional smile. Row 3, row 4, row 5. Emma's window was closing. Her chance was coming. Soon Sarah would be at row 9, and Emma would have to make the biggest decision of her 12-year-old life. Row 6, row 7, row 8. Emma's heart felt like it might explode out of her chest. Trust yourself, her father had said. You notice things, that's a gift. The beverage cart stopped at row 8, right in front of them. This was it. No more time to think, no more chances to change her mind. Emma took one last, shaky breath and prepared to say the 2 words that would change everything. Emma's mind was a war zone. 2 voices battled inside her head, each one screaming louder than the other, drowning out rational thought. He's dangerous, you know he is. Look at him, look at him. You're 12 years old. You don't know anything. You're going to ruin an innocent man's life because you watched too many crime shows with your dad. Her palms were so sweaty they left marks on her jeans. She wiped them frantically, then wiped them again. The beverage cart was at row 8 now, Sarah Chen smiling and chatting with passengers, completely oblivious to the panic attack happening 1 row behind her. Emma stole another glance at the man in 9A. He'd pulled out his phone again, checking it compulsively even though they were supposed to be in airplane mode. Emma caught a glimpse of the screen before he tilted it away. 11:56 a.m. And below that something else. Numbers counting down. 0612, 0611, 0610. 6 minutes. Oh God, he has a timer. An actual countdown timer. Emma's vision tunneled. The cabin seemed to spin around her. This was real. This wasn't her imagination. This wasn't paranoia. There was a man sitting 18 inches away from her with a timer counting down to something, with a bag he wouldn't release, with wires she'd seen, with "forgive me" on his lips. But what if you're wrong? The thought hit her like a punch to the stomach. What if it was a timer for something innocent? What if he had medication he needed to take at specific times? What if the wires were just phone chargers tangled in his bag? What if "forgive me" was about something completely different, a fight with his wife, a business deal gone wrong, a personal failure that had nothing to do with terrorism? If Emma said something and she was wrong, this man's life would be destroyed. He'd be tackled by air marshals, detained, questioned for hours, maybe days. His name would be in the news. He'd lose his job. His family would suffer. All because a scared little girl with an FBI agent father had an overactive imagination. Emma imagined the headlines. Paranoid child causes emergency landing. False alarm costs airline thousands. Innocent man traumatized by baseless accusation. She imagined her father's face when he found out she'd cried wolf, that she'd used the sacred code word for nothing. The disappointment in his eyes. The knowledge that he'd trusted her with something important and she'd abused it. She imagined standing in front of the man from 9A, having to apologize while news cameras rolled. "I'm sorry I ruined your life because I was scared." The shame of it made her want to curl into a ball and disappear. But what if you're right? The counterthought came quieter but somehow more devastating. What if she said nothing and the timer ran out? What if 6 minutes from now, 5 minutes now, something terrible happened that she could have prevented? Emma thought about the honeymoon couple in row 11. Would they ever get to have children? Would they ever celebrate their first anniversary? She thought about the 4-year-old with the Disney princess coloring book. Would she ever get to go to kindergarten? Would she ever lose her first tooth? She thought about her grandmother, waiting at the Orlando airport with her homemade welcome sign, checking her watch, excited to see Emma walk through the gate. Would she spend the rest of her life wondering why Emma's plane never arrived? She thought about her mother and father, going about their Saturday morning. Her dad probably giving his presentation right now. Her mom probably grocery shopping, neither of them knowing that their daughter was 7 miles high and terrified. Would they ever forgive themselves for letting her fly alone? Would they spend years replaying this morning, wondering if they should have driven her instead, if they should have kept her home, if there was any sign they'd missed? The beverage cart moved to row 8B, 1 seat away. Emma could hear Sarah's cheerful voice. "What can I get for you today? We have Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite." Decide. You have to decide right now. Emma's entire body was shaking. She gripped the armrest so hard her fingers ached. Her breath came in short, panicky gasps that made her dizzy. The cabin lights seemed too bright, the recycled air too thin. She looked out the window at the clouds below, peaceful and white and beautiful. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives, shopping, working, watching TV, having lunch, not knowing that up here, a 12-year-old girl was trying to decide between two kinds of wrong, the wrong of accusing an innocent person, or the wrong of staying silent when people might die. What would Dad do? The question cut through the chaos in her mind like a blade. What would her father do if he were in her position? But she already knew the answer. She'd watched him her whole life. She'd seen him leave dinner parties because something felt off. She'd heard him call in suspicious packages that turned out to be abandoned Amazon boxes. She'd listened to him explain, again and again, that false positives were acceptable in security work, that it was better to be safe than sorry, that the embarrassment of being wrong was nothing compared to the guilt of being right and doing nothing. Better to look foolish than to be dead right, he always said. It was his motto, repeated so often it had become a family joke. But it wasn't funny now. Emma checked the man's phone one more time. He was holding it lower now, less careful about hiding it. The timer read 0447, 0446, 0445. Less than 5 minutes. This is your last chance, Emma thought. After Sarah moves past you, she'll be at the back of the plane and then it'll be too late. It's now or never. She thought about every moment that had led her here, every dinner conversation with her dad, every people-watching game at restaurants, every lesson about situational awareness and trusting your instincts. Had it all been leading to this? Had her father been preparing her, even without knowing it, for this exact moment? Or had he accidentally turned his daughter into a paranoid mess who saw danger where there was none? The beverage cart reached row 8C. Sarah was finishing up with the passenger directly in front of Emma. In seconds, literally seconds, she would be at row 9, and Emma would have to speak or forever hold her peace. Emma's throat was so tight she wasn't sure she could make words come out. Her tongue felt thick and clumsy in her mouth. Her heart hammered so hard she could see her shirt moving with each beat. The man beside her shifted in his seat, his hand moving toward the duffel bag zipper. Emma saw his fingers trembling as they touched the metal pull. 0412, 0411, 0410. God, please, Emma prayed to whoever might be listening. Please let me be wrong. Please let this be nothing. But please give me the courage to speak anyway. Sarah Chen pushed the beverage cart even with row 9 and looked up with that warm, professional smile. What can I get for you today, sweetheart? This was it. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Emma could feel the weight of 189 lives pressing down on her 12-year-old shoulders, could feel the possibility of ruining an innocent man's life, could feel every eye in heaven and earth watching to see what she would do. Her father's voice echoed one last time. You're smart, Emma. You notice things. That's a gift. Don't ever doubt what you see. Emma opened her mouth. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended, barely more than a whisper, but it was steady. Surprisingly, impossibly steady. Excuse me, miss. Sarah leaned in closer. Yes, honey. Emma could feel the man in 9A tense beside her, could sense him listening. She kept her voice light, casual, like she was asking for apple juice or extra peanuts, like her heart wasn't trying to beat its way out of her chest, like the next 2 words wouldn't change everything. I'm not feeling very well. Emma swallowed hard, her mouth desert dry. I think I need to see Mr. Phillip. She said it like a question, unsure if she'd gotten it right, terrified she'd remembered wrong. For a fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, barely a blink, Sarah Chen's face went completely blank. The professional smile vanished. The warm eyes went cold and sharp. The can of ginger ale she'd been holding slipped from her fingers and bounced off the beverage cart with a hollow metallic clatter that seemed impossibly loud in Emma's ears. Then, like someone had flipped a switch, Sarah's training kicked in and the mask came back. The smile returned, warm and concerned, but Emma could see the difference now, could see the steel beneath the kindness. Oh, honey, you're not feeling well. Sarah's voice was honey and warmth, but her eyes were scanning Emma's face, then flicking to the man beside her, then back to Emma, reading everything, understanding everything. Let me get you some ginger ale. That'll help settle your tummy. Their eyes met, and in that moment Emma knew. Sarah understood. She'd heard the code, she knew what it meant. And there was no taking it back now. Sarah Chen had been a flight attendant for 23 years. She'd served coffee through turbulence that sent trays flying. She delivered bobbies at 30,000 feet. She performed CPR on a passenger having a heart attack over the Atlantic. She'd seen medical emergencies, drunk passengers, equipment failures, and once, memorably, a woman who tried to open the emergency exit because she needed fresh air. But in all those 23 years, across thousands of flights and hundreds of thousands of passengers, she had never, not once, heard someone use the code phrase Mr. Phillip. She'd learned it during her initial training in 1992, back when airlines still took the hijacking threats of the 70s and 80s seriously. Her instructor, a stern woman named Patricia who'd been flying since the 1960s, had made them memorize it. "You'll probably never use this," Patricia had said, writing it on the whiteboard in her precise handwriting. "God willing, you'll retire without ever hearing it. But if you do, if someone ever says they need to see Mr. Phillip, you treat it like the plane is on fire, because it might be." The code had been phased out in the early 2000s, replaced by more modern security protocols. Most airlines didn't even teach it anymore. But Sarah remembered. And now, standing in the aisle of Flight 447 with a ginger ale can rolling at her feet, she heard a 12-year-old child speak those words with perfect, terrible clarity. "I need to see Mr. Phillip." For that fraction of a second, Sarah's mind went completely blank with shock. Then training, 2 decades of training, drilled into muscle memory and instinct took over. "Oh honey, you're not feeling well." She kept her voice warm, concerned, exactly the same tone she'd use for any airsick child. "Let me get you some ginger ale. That'll help settle your tummy." But even as she spoke, Sarah's eyes were working. She looked at Emma's face, pale, terrified but determined. Not the face of a prank, not the face of a child playing games. The face of someone genuinely scared. Then Sarah's gaze flicked to the man in 9A, and her blood turned cold. He was gripping a black duffel bag so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Sweat had soaked through his shirt in dark patches. His leg was bouncing with manic energy. And his eyes had the glassy, faraway look of someone who'd made a terrible decision and couldn't turn back. Sarah had seen that look before. Once, on a flight to Dallas in 2001, 3 weeks after 9/11, when a man had tried to rush the cockpit. The air marshals had tackled him before he made it 3 rows. Turned out he was just mentally ill off his medication, not a terrorist. But Sarah remembered his eyes, the disconnect from reality, the single-minded purpose. The man in 9A had those same eyes. "Thank you," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Sarah handed her a ginger ale with steady hands that betrayed none of the adrenaline now flooding her system. "You just sip that slowly, sweetheart. I'll check on you in a few minutes." She moved the cart forward 1 row, offering drinks to row 10 with that same professional smile, but her mind was racing. Okay, Code Phillip, threat assessment. What did Patricia teach us? Don't approach the subject. Don't alert them. Don't cause panic. Notify the captain immediately. Identify air marshals if present. Prepare for emergency landing. Sarah caught Mark's eye, her fellow flight attendant working the rear of the cabin. She gave him a specific look, a slight tilt of her head that meant something's wrong. Mark's eyebrows raised fractionally, and he nodded, understanding that Sarah needed to step away. "Mark, can you take over here?" Sarah kept her voice light. "I need to check something up front." "Of course." Mark moved to the cart without hesitation. Sarah walked toward the cockpit, her legs feeling like rubber beneath her, but her stride steady and purposeful. She didn't look back at row 9. Didn't let her face show anything but mild concern about a routine matter. Her hand trembled as she picked up the intercom phone outside the cockpit door. She pressed the button that connected directly to the captain. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Sarah." She spoke quietly, her back to the cabin. "We have a Code Phillip situation in row 9. A 12-year-old unaccompanied minor in 9B initiated contact. Adult male, exhibiting extreme nervousness, won't release carry-on bag, excessive perspiration, possible wiring visible per the minor." There was a pause, a long, terrible pause where Sarah could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Then Captain James Rodriguez's voice, carefully controlled. "You're certain about the code phrase, Sarah?" "Positive, sir. The passenger is Agent David Martinez's daughter." Another pause. Sarah heard Rodriguez inhale sharply. "David Martinez, FBI." "Yes, sir." Jesus Christ. Rodriguez's voice was barely a whisper, then he was all business. Okay. What's your assessment of the immediate threat level? Sarah glanced back down the aisle. The man in 9A was checking his phone again, his face growing paler. Hi, sir. Subject appears increasingly agitated. I recommend. Agreed. Do not approach. I'm initiating threat level Alpha protocol. Rodriguez's voice was steady now, the voice of a pilot who trained for this scenario in hundreds of simulations but never thought he'd face it in reality. Are there air marshals on board? I believe so, sir. I'll alert them through standard procedures. Do it quietly. I'm contacting ATC now. We're diverting to Kansas City, ETA. She heard him conferring with his first officer. 17 minutes. Keep the subject calm if possible, but maintain distance if he makes any threatening moves. Understood, sir. Sarah hung up and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking now, so she clasped them together. Professional. Stay professional. 189 people are counting on you. She caught the eye of a man in seat 14C, late 40s, athletic build, alert posture. She'd noticed him during boarding because he'd paid cash for his ticket and upgraded to an aisle seat at the last minute. All the hallmarks of an air marshal. Sarah walked past him, pausing just long enough to say quietly, "Sir, when you have a moment, could you help me with something in the galley?" The man's eyes sharpened instantly. Of course. A minute later in the rear galley, Sarah spoke in a whisper. Federal Air Marshal. Yes, he kept his voice equally low. What's the situation? Possible threat in 9A code. Philip initiated by a passenger. Captain has declared threat level Alpha. We're diverting to Kansas City. The marshal's face went hard. Describe the subject. Mid-30s, black duffel bag, won't release it. Extreme nervousness, sweating profusely. 12-year-old in 9B reported seeing wiring from the bag. Other marshals on board. I believe 3A. I haven't confirmed. I'll verify. The marshal's hand moved subtly to his hip, checking his concealed weapon. What's the captain's protocol? Monitor but don't engage unless subject makes a move. Landing in 17 minutes. Understood. I'll reposition to 12C, closer but not obvious. Alert your people to stay clear of rows 8 through 10. Sarah nodded and returned to the cabin, her professional smile back in place. She whispered to Mark about the situation, watched his face go pale, then watched him nod and continue service like nothing was wrong. In the cockpit, Captain James Rodriguez was already on the radio with Kansas City Center, his voice calm but urgent. Kansas City Center, United 447, we are declaring an emergency. Request immediate priority clearance for landing, runway 1 left. We have a potential security threat on board. The air traffic controller's voice crackled back, suddenly all business. United 447, roger your emergency. Clearing all traffic. Emergency services are being notified. Can you specify the nature of the threat? Possible IED on board. We need full emergency response on the ground. Bomb squad, tactical team, the works. And keep it quiet. We haven't evacuated the cabin and we don't want to create panic. Copy that, United 447. You're cleared direct Kansas City, descend and maintain flight level 250. Emergency services will be in position. Rodriguez turned to his first officer, Tom Chen, no relation to Sarah. Tom, start the descent. Make it gentle. We don't want our guy getting suspicious. And get me the passenger manifest. I want to know everything about the subject in 9A. In the cabin, passengers noticed the plane banking slightly, beginning its gradual descent. Most didn't think anything of it. Planes changed altitude all the time. But Emma noticed. And so did the man in 9A. He pulled out his phone again, checked the time, 12:01 p.m. Emma watched his eyes widen slightly. His timer read 0113, 0112, 0111. Less than 90 seconds. Then the captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and practiced. Folks, this is Captain Rodriguez. We're experiencing a minor technical issue with one of our instrument indicators. Nothing to be concerned about, but as a precaution, we're going to make an unscheduled stop in Kansas City to have our maintenance team take a look. We should be on the ground in about 15 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for an early arrival. The announcement was met with groans and annoyed sighs from passengers. People pulled out phones to text about delays. The businessman in 8C swore under his breath about a missed meeting. But Emma heard something else in the captain's voice, a careful control, a deliberate steadiness that told her he knew. They all knew. Her message had been received, believed, and acted upon. And she'd either just saved 189 lives, or she'd made the biggest, most embarrassing mistake of her life. The man in 9A sat frozen, staring at his phone as his timer counted down. 0047, 0046, 0045. Then slowly his head turned toward the window. Emma followed his gaze and saw what he was seeing. The ground was visible now, closer than it should be. They were descending, fast. The man's breathing quickened. His hand moved to the duffel bag zipper. And Emma realized with horror he knew. He knew something was wrong. And whatever he'd planned to happen in 90 seconds at 35,000 feet was about to happen right now, with 189 people trapped in a metal tube and nowhere to run. The descent into Kansas City felt like falling in slow motion. Emma watched the altimeter display on the seatback screen in front of her. 34,000 feet, 32,500 feet, 31,000 feet. Each 1,000 feet was a countdown to something, safety or catastrophe, she didn't know which. The man beside her had gone completely still, not the relaxed stillness of someone calming down, but the frozen stillness of a predator that's just realized it's been spotted. His eyes were locked on his phone, watching two things simultaneously. The time 12:01 p.m. and his countdown timer 0038, 0037, 0036. 36 seconds until whatever he'd planned. But they were descending, too early, too fast, and Emma could see the realization spreading across his face like a crack in ice, slow at first, then all at once. "No," he whispered, then louder. "No, no, no, this isn't right. We're not supposed to." He looked out the window, saw the ground rising to meet them, saw the flight path all wrong. His head snapped toward Emma, eyes wild with sudden understanding. "What did you do?" Emma pressed herself against the window, trying to become invisible, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. "What did you tell them?" His voice was rising now, loud enough that the passengers around them were starting to look over. "You little..." "Sir, is everything all right?" Mark appeared from nowhere, positioning himself between the man and Emma, his bulk blocking the aisle. Behind him, Emma could see another man, the one from seat 14C, standing up, stretching casually, but his eyes were locked on row 9. "No, everything is not all right," the man's voice cracked. "We're landing. We're not supposed to be landing yet. The timer..." He cut himself off, his hand flying to his mouth as if he could stuff the words back in. Emma's blood turned to ice. He just admitted it. He just admitted there's a timer. Mark kept his voice calm, professional, like he was dealing with a nervous flyer having a panic attack. "Sir, I understand this is frustrating, but we're just making a quick stop. You'll be on your way to Orlando before you know it." "No, no, you don't understand." The man was gripping his phone so tightly Emma heard the case crack. The timer read 0019, 0018, 0017. Less than 20 seconds. The man's other hand moved to the duffel bag zipper. "Sir, I need you to remain calm." Mark's tone changed, became more authoritative. But the man wasn't listening anymore. His fingers found the zipper pull and started to tug. Everything happened at once. The air marshal from 14C moved with practiced speed, no longer casual, his hand going to his hip. "Federal Air Marshal, do not move that bag." The second marshal, Emma spotted him now. The man from 3A was already in the aisle, weapon drawn but held low, not pointed yet. "Hands where I can see them. Step away from the bag." Passengers screamed. The honeymoon couple in row 11 ducked down. The mother with twins grabbed her children and pulled them to the floor. The businessman in 8C scrambled over his seatmate, trying to get away. The cabin erupted in chaos. People shouting, crying, some trying to run toward the back of the plane even though there was nowhere to go. But Michael Peterson didn't step away from the bag. He pulled it onto his lap, both arms wrapped around it like he was protecting a child. "You don't understand," he said, and Emma heard something in his voice that terrified her more than the screaming, more than the guns, more than everything: resignation. "It's too late. It's all too late. The timer." He looked at his phone one last time. 0007, 0006, 0005. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "God forgive me, I'm sorry." His thumb moved toward a button on his phone screen. Emma couldn't see exactly what it was, but the gesture was unmistakable. Manual override. He was going to trigger it himself. The marshal fired. Not a kill shot. They'd been trained for this, trained to avoid hitting anything that might set off the device. The taser barbs hit the man in the shoulder and neck, 50,000 volts of electricity locking his muscles into rigid spasm. His phone flew from his hand, bouncing off the seat and clattering to the floor. His body went rigid, then slack. The duffel bag fell. Everyone froze. The bag lay in the aisle, half open, and Emma could see inside now. Wires, circuit boards, blocks of something clay-like wrapped in plastic, and a small digital display glowing red: 0002, 0001. Oh God, it's going to explode. But the display didn't hit 0. Instead, it flickered, jumped back to 0005, then 0012, then started counting up: 0013, 0014, 0015. The man's phone, the one with the manual override, was on the floor 3 feet away, screen shattered. The timer on it had stopped at 0003. The marshal from 14C was already on his radio. "We have the subject contained. Device is visible. Appears to be electronic timer, still active but malfunctioning. We need EOD now." The plane lurched as Captain Rodriguez pushed the descent even steeper. The gentle 500 feet per minute drop became 2,000 feet per minute. Passengers screamed as the pressure change hit their ears. Overhead bins popped open. A bag fell out, narrowly missing someone's head. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. Brace for emergency landing. Flight attendants, prepare for emergency evacuation." Sarah Chen's voice rang out strong and clear over the screaming. "Heads down, stay down, brace, brace, brace." Emma bent forward, head between her knees, hands over her head, exactly like the safety card showed. Through her arms, she could see the man from 9A on the floor, zip-tied by the marshals, tears streaming down his face, mumbling, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." She could see the duffel bag in the aisle, could see the timer display flickering erratically: 0023, 0011, 0147, 0008. And she could see, through the window, the ground rushing up to meet them. The runway lights of Kansas City International, fire trucks already in position, ambulances, police cars, vehicles she didn't recognize, probably bomb disposal. The landing gear deployed with a thunk that shook the whole aircraft. The plane banked hard, lining up with the runway. Emma's stomach lurched. 12:04 p.m. They'd been in the air for exactly 34 minutes since the man first whispered, 15 more minutes. The wheels touched down hard, not the smooth landing Emma had experienced on other flights, but a deliberate slam that made everyone bounce in their seats. The brakes engaged with a roar, and the plane decelerated so fast Emma's seatbelt cut into her shoulder. Through the window, Emma saw the fire trucks keeping pace with them, saw tactical vehicles with flashing lights. The plane was still rolling, still slowing, when she saw the first SWAT team vehicle pull alongside. They weren't taxiing toward the terminal. They were heading toward a remote area of the airfield, far from any buildings, far from any people. The plane came to a complete stop. For one moment, one perfect crystalline moment, there was absolute silence. No engines, no screaming, just the sound of 189 people breathing. Then the forward door flew open with a pneumatic hiss. Men in tactical gear poured into the cabin, moving with choreographed precision. 2 went straight to the man from 9A, hauling him to his feet, dragging him toward the exit. 3 more formed a perimeter around the duffel bag, weapons drawn, facing outward. And then, walking slowly down the aisle with deliberate steps, came a figure in a full bomb disposal suit. The kind Emma had only seen in movies, bulky and robotic-looking, making the person inside look like an astronaut. The figure knelt beside the bag. "Everyone remain exactly where you are," said a woman's voice from inside the helmet, muffled but audible. "Do not move, do not stand, do not panic." Emma couldn't see the woman's face through the helmet's visor, but she could see her gloved hands moving over the bag with steady precision. She pulled out a device that looked like a tablet with an antenna, passed it over the bag. The screen glowed, showing an X-ray image Emma couldn't fully understand, just shapes and shadows and things that looked wrong. "Command, this is Baker." The woman's voice was perfectly calm, like she was ordering coffee, not kneeling next to a bomb. "We have confirmed IED, sophisticated device, PETN-based explosive with electronic timer," and she leaned closer to the screen. "A secondary trigger, appears to be pressure release mechanism. The timer is malfunctioning due to the taser strike disrupting the circuit, but the pressure trigger is still active. Any movement could." "How much time?" A voice crackled over her radio. The bomb technician checked something on the timer display. Emma could see it from her seat. The numbers were scrolling randomly now: 0234, 0047, 0312, 0003. "Primary timer is compromised and unreliable. Could detonate at any moment, or the malfunction could have disabled it entirely. No way to know without closer examination. But with the pressure release trigger, if I try to move it." "Then don't move it," the voice commanded. "How much explosive?" The technician studied her scanner. "Approximately 3 pounds PETN. At this proximity, would destroy the aircraft and anything within a 50-foot radius." Emma's breath caught. 3 pounds. That didn't sound like much, but the technician's voice made it sound like a nuclear bomb. "Evacuate the aircraft," the voice on the radio commanded. "You have 5 minutes to disarm, or we pull you out too." "Copy that. Beginning disarmament procedure." What happened next would stay with Emma forever. The systematic evacuation, passengers moved in groups, away from row 9, toward the rear exit and emergency slides on the opposite side of the aircraft. The terrified faces, the crying children, the mother with twins being carried by police officers, one child on each hip. Emma was lifted bodily by a tactical officer, a man whose name tag read SULLIVAN, who carried her like she weighed nothing. "Close your eyes, sweetheart," he said gently. "You don't need to see this." But Emma couldn't close her eyes. She watched over Sullivan's shoulder as they passed the bomb technician, still kneeling, still working with hands that didn't shake even though she was 3 feet from death. She watched as they passed Michael Peterson, face down and zip-tied, sobbing into the carpet. She watched as they exited the plane into the bright Kansas City afternoon, where hundreds of emergency vehicles waited with flashing lights that turned the world into a strobe. And then she was on the tarmac, 200 yards from the plane, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember receiving, watching the solitary aircraft sit alone on the runway like a beached whale full of death. Emma stood behind a fire truck, watching the plane through gaps between emergency vehicles, her legs shaking so badly that Officer Sullivan kept one hand on her shoulder to steady her. Around her, the other passengers huddled in groups, some crying, some in shock, some talking rapidly on cell phones to loved ones who had no idea how close they'd come to never hearing those voices again. The honeymoon couple stood together, the bride's white knuckles gripping her husband's hand. The mother with twins sat on the ground, both children in her lap, rocking them as they cried. The businessman from 8C was bent over, hands on his knees, vomiting onto the tarmac. But Emma couldn't look away from the plane. The bomb technician, call sign Baker, was still inside, still working. Emma could see her silhouette through the window of row 9, bent over the device, moving with careful, deliberate precision. "What's taking so long?" someone behind Emma whispered. "Shut up," someone else hissed. "Let her work." An FBI agent, a woman whose name Emma had already forgotten, knelt beside her with a phone. "Emma, can you tell me everything you noticed about the subject, everything you remember?" But Emma couldn't focus. Her eyes were locked on that window, on that figure in the bomb suit, on the woman who'd chosen to stay behind when everyone else ran. "Emma," the agent tried again. "Sweetie, I know this is hard, but—" "My dad," Emma said suddenly, her voice small and cracked. "Did someone call my dad?" The agent's face softened. "We've been trying to reach Agent Martinez. He's in a meeting, but we've sent officers to get him. He'll call as soon as—" "Please," Emma whispered. "Please just let her get out, please." The agent followed Emma's gaze to the plane and fell silent. They stood together, watching, waiting. Emma noticed she wasn't the only one praying all around her. Passengers and crew and even hardened tactical officers stood frozen, watching the plane, watching the clock. 4 minutes since evacuation began. Inside the aircraft, Baker was working with tools Emma couldn't see, didn't understand. The timer display was still visible through the window, still flickering erratically. One moment it would show 00, 15, the next 04, 37, the next 00, 02. The taser strike that had saved them had also made the device unpredictable, potentially more dangerous. "Talk to me, Baker," a voice crackled over the loudspeaker of the command vehicle. Everyone on the tarmac could hear it. "How are we looking?" Baker's response came through clearly, her voice still impossibly calm. "Primary circuit is fried from the electrical discharge. I've isolated the power source, 2 9-volt batteries wired in series. Timer is malfunctioning but still connected to the detonator. The real problem is the pressure release trigger." "Explain." "It's under the explosive material. If I lift the device to access the timer from underneath, the pressure change could trigger detonation. I need to disarm the pressure switch first, but I can't reach it without moving the explosive." "Can you disable the batteries?" "Negative. They're wired with a trembler switch. Any movement triggers detonation." This guy knew what he was doing. Emma's stomach turned. This guy, Michael Peterson, the man who'd sat 18 inches from her, close enough that she'd smelled his sweat, close enough that she could have reached out and touched him. He'd been carrying death, and he'd known exactly how to make it work. 3 minutes. "Baker, we're at T-minus 3 minutes. If you can't disarm it, we need to pull you out." "Give me 2 more minutes. I think I can bypass the pressure switch if I—" The timer display flickered, jumped to 00, 01, and everyone on the tarmac gasped. But it didn't go to 0. It jumped to 02, 15, then 00, 34, still scrolling randomly. Baker didn't even flinch. Her hands continued moving with steady precision. The malfunction is actually helping. The circuit is trying to complete but can't maintain a consistent signal. But if it randomly hits the right sequence. "We know, 2 minutes, Baker." Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world had narrowed to that single window, that single figure, those steady hands working to undo what hatred had built. She thought about the woman's family. Did she have children? A husband? Parents waiting at home, expecting her to return from another day at work, not knowing she was 3 feet from enough explosive to vaporize her. 2 minutes. Baker pulled out what looked like a pair of wire cutters. Emma saw her hesitate for just a moment, the first sign of uncertainty she'd shown. The bomb disposal suit had a camera on the helmet, and somewhere in that command vehicle, experts were watching the same thing Baker was seeing, offering guidance, making calculations. Baker command recommends the blue wire, negative lead. Concur cutting now. The wire cutters closed. Emma's heart stopped. Nothing happened. The timer continued its random flickering. 0123, 0045, 0208. Primary detonator disabled, Baker said, and for the first time, Emma heard a hint of relief in her voice. But the pressure trigger is still active. I need to stabilize the device before moving it. 1 minute. Baker, you're out of time. We need to. 30 more seconds, please. Emma watched as Baker pulled out a canister of something. Foam, it looked like. She sprayed it carefully around the base of the device, creating a rigid support structure that would prevent any shift in pressure when the bomb was moved. 45 seconds. 30 seconds. Command, I'm going to attempt removal of the timer assembly. If the pressure trigger activates, the foam should absorb enough of the shift to prevent. Negative Baker, extract now, that's an order. With respect, sir, if I leave this device here and the malfunction resolves, the timer could complete its sequence. We'd have a live bomb with an active pressure trigger sitting in a grounded aircraft. Better to finish it now. Silence 5 seconds, 10. You have 20 seconds. Baker's hands moved with impossible precision. She lifted the timer assembly slowly, so slowly Emma could barely see it moving. The foam crackled as the pressure shifted. The entire device tilted slightly. The flickering display went solid, 0003. Then 0002. Emma's fingernails dug into her palms so hard she drew blood. 0001. Baker pulled the timer free, separating it from the main device. She held it up, disconnected, powerless, dead. 0000. Nothing happened. Device is disarmed, Baker said calmly, as if she just finished making coffee. Timer is separated, power source disconnected, pressure trigger stabilized. We're clear, we're clear. The cheer that went up was deafening. Emma felt her knees give out, felt Officer Sullivan catch her. Around her, people were crying, hugging, laughing with the manic relief of those who just stared death in the face and lived. The FBI agent who'd been questioning Emma wrapped her arms around her, and Emma realized the woman was crying. They were all crying, grown men and women in tactical gear, standing on a Kansas City runway, crying because a woman named Baker had just saved their lives with wire cutters and foam. Emma watched as Baker walked out of the plane, carrying the separated timer in one hand like it was a prize. She descended the stairs with deliberate steps, no rush now, and began the long walk across the tarmac toward the command vehicle. When she was 50 feet from the plane, Baker stopped, turned back and gave it the finger, a single, defiant gesture that made the entire crowd of first responders roar with laughter and applause. Baker pulled off her helmet, revealing a woman in her 40s with short gray hair plastered to her head with sweat. She was grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Emma watched, numb with relief and shock and 1,000 other emotions she couldn't name. It was over. The bomb was disarmed. Everyone was safe. Her decision, her terrible, impossible decision to speak up, had been right. Miss Martinez, a new voice. Emma turned to see a man in an FBI jacket, his phone in his hand, his expression gentle. Your father is on the line. He's been trying to reach you. Would you like to talk to him?" Emma took the phone with trembling hands. "Dad." The sound that came through the speaker was half sob, half laugh, completely broken. "Emma, oh God, Emma, oh God, they told me what happened. They told me what you did. They told me." His voice cracked completely, dissolved into crying. "I'm okay, Daddy, I'm okay." Emma's own tears started now, running down her face in hot streams. I remembered what you taught me, about noticing things, about Mr. Philip." There was a long silence on the other end, filled only with her father's ragged breathing as he tried to compose himself. "You saved them, baby," he finally managed, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved everyone. You're 12 years old and you saved 189 people. I'm so proud of you. I can't even." He couldn't finish, just cried. Emma clutched the phone like a lifeline. "Dad, can you come get me? I don't want to fly anymore today. I don't want to ever fly again." Through tears or laughter, Emma couldn't tell which, her father said, "I'm already in the car, sweetheart. I left the second they called me. I'm coming. I'll be there in 3 hours, maybe 2 if I speed. The state patrol knows they're going to let me speed. I'm coming, Emma. I'm coming right now." "Okay," Emma whispered. "Okay, I'll wait. I love you so much. Do you understand? I love you so much." "I love you too, Dad." Emma handed the phone back to the FBI agent and sat down right there on the tarmac, her legs finally giving out completely. She sat and watched as Baker handed over the disarmed timer to her team, watched as the bomb squad began the careful process of removing the remaining explosive from the aircraft, watched as Michael Peterson was loaded into an armored vehicle in zip ties and leg shackles. She sat and watched and tried to process what had just happened. She was 12 years old. She just stopped a terrorist attack. And somewhere, 3 hours away, her father was driving like a madman to hold his daughter and tell her she'd done good. 3 hours and 17 minutes later, Emma saw her father's car screech into the secure area of Kansas City International Airport, escorted by 2 Missouri State Highway Patrol vehicles with lights flashing. He'd made a 3-hour drive in just over 3 hours, which meant he'd been going very, very fast. The car was still rolling when David Martinez threw open the door and ran toward his daughter. Emma had been sitting in a conference room at the FBI field office adjacent to the airport, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like coffee and industrial detergent, answering questions from agents who kept calling her brave while looking at her like she was made of glass. She told them everything 3 times, about the sweating, the wires, the muttered prayers, the timer, the code phrase. Each time she told it, it felt less real, like she was describing a movie she'd watched, not something that had happened to her. But when she heard her father's voice in the hallway, "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" everything became real again. "Dad!" Emma was out of her chair and running before she knew she was moving. They collided in the hallway outside the conference room, and David Martinez dropped to his knees, pulling Emma into his arms with enough force to knock the breath out of her. He was shaking. Emma had never felt her father shake before, and making sounds she'd never heard him make, somewhere between laughing and sobbing. "I'm okay," Emma said into his shoulder. "Dad, I'm okay, I promise." I know. He said it like a mantra, like if he said it enough times he'd believe it. "But I thought, when they called me, when they said Code Philip, when they said it was you who..." His voice broke completely. He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands cupping her cheeks, his eyes scanning her like he was checking for injuries. "Did he hurt you? Did anyone hurt you?" "No, I'm fine, really." You're fine. He pulled her close again and Emma felt his tears dripping into her hair. "You used the code, you remembered, you saved them all." "I was so scared I was wrong," Emma whispered. "I almost didn't say anything." "But you did, that's what matters. You trusted your training, you trusted yourself." He leaned back again and this time he was smiling through tears. "Emma, do you understand what you did? Do you understand what you stopped?" Emma shook her head. David looked at the FBI agents hovering nearby, and one of them, a senior agent named Chen, no relation to Sarah, Emma learned, nodded and gestured them back into the conference room. Agent Chen opened a file folder and spoke gently. "Emma, your father's right. You need to understand what your actions prevented today." She slid a photograph across the table. It showed the inside of the duffel bag, now carefully dismantled by the bomb squad. Emma saw blocks of what looked like tan clay, wires, circuit boards, batteries, and the timer display she'd glimpsed through the window. Michael Peterson was carrying 3 pounds of PETN explosive, Agent Chen explained. "That's penterythritol tetranitrate, one of the most powerful explosives available. 3 pounds might not sound like much, but at 35,000 feet, it would have completely destroyed Flight 447. Emma's father's arm tightened around her shoulders. The device was set to detonate at 12:25 p.m., exactly the time your flight would have been over Branson, Missouri. Population 12,000, mostly tourists and families. Agent Chen pulled out a map with a circle drawn on it. At cruising altitude, the debris field from a catastrophic explosion would have been approximately 15 square miles. Aircraft parts, fuel, luggage, and passengers would have rained down on schools, hotels, shopping centers, theaters. Emma felt dizzy. She'd known it was bad, but hearing the numbers, seeing the map, understanding the scope. Conservative estimates suggest the ground casualties could have been anywhere from 50 to 200 people, depending on where the debris landed. Combined with the 189 passengers and crew aboard Flight 447, Agent Chen paused. "You potentially saved between 240 and 390 lives today, Emma. You're 12 years old, and you prevented what could have been one of the worst domestic terrorist attacks since 9/11. The room was silent. Emma couldn't process numbers that big, couldn't imagine that many people, couldn't comprehend that one decision, 2 words spoken to a flight attendant, had made that much difference. "Michael Peterson has been interrogated," Agent Chen continued. "He was radicalized online over the past 18 months, lost his job, went through a divorce, fell into extremist forums that convinced him America needed to be punished for perceived wrongs. He chose a spring break flight specifically to maximize casualties, families with children." Emma thought about the 4-year-old with the Disney princess coloring book, the honeymoon couple, the mother with twins. "He would have succeeded," Agent Chen said quietly. "The device was sophisticated, well-constructed, with multiple redundancies. The only reason it didn't detonate was because you alerted the crew early enough for us to land the plane, and because the air marshal's taser strike disrupted the primary timer. If you had hesitated even 5 more minutes." "But she didn't," David Martinez interrupted, his voice fierce. "She didn't hesitate. She did exactly what she was supposed to do." Agent Chen smiled. "She did more than that, Agent Martinez. She did something extraordinary." Over the next 3 weeks, Emma's life became a whirlwind she barely recognized. At first, her identity was protected. News reports called her a minor passenger and an unaccompanied child. But the story was too big to stay quiet. Flight attendants talked. Passengers talked. Within a week, reporters had figured out who she was. Emma's parents sat her down and explained that she had a choice. She could stay anonymous or she could tell her story. "If you go public," her mother said, "your life will change. People will recognize you. You'll be interviewed. It will be overwhelming. But if you tell your story," her father added, "you might inspire other kids. You might help them understand that paying attention matters, that speaking up matters, that their voice matters even when they're young." Emma thought about it for exactly 3 minutes. Then she said, "I want to tell it. I want other kids to know they can do something too." The interview aired on a Tuesday evening in prime time. Emma wore her favorite blue sweater and sat between her parents on a soft couch, her hands folded in her lap, while a kind reporter asked her questions. "Were you scared?" the reporter asked. Emma thought about lying, about saying she was brave and confident, but her father had taught her to always tell the truth. Terrified, she answered honestly. I thought I might be wrong. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. But my dad always says being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. What would you say to other kids who might see something wrong? Emma looked directly into the camera, thinking about all the kids watching, all the kids who might one day face their own impossible choice. I'd say, trust yourself. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Adults tell kids to listen to grown-ups, and that's usually good advice, but sometimes kids notice things adults miss. We pay attention differently. We see things. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Don't be afraid to speak up. The worst thing that happens if you're wrong is you're wrong. People might be annoyed or embarrassed, but if you're right and you say nothing. She didn't need to finish. Everyone watching knew what she meant. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from across the country, from retired pilots thanking her, from school children calling her a hero, from parents saying she'd given them hope, from survivors of other tragedies telling her she'd made a difference. Captain James Rodriguez sent her a personal letter on United Airlines letterhead. Dear Emma, in my 23 years of flying, I have never been more grateful to receive a message from my crew. Your awareness and courage saved every person aboard Flight 447, including me. You are welcome in any cockpit I command for the rest of your life. I mean that. Call the airline, tell them Captain Rodriguez said so, and you will have a jump seat whenever you want it. You are an extraordinary young woman. Thank you for saving my life. Captain James Rodriguez. Sarah Chen wrote too, in looping handwriting on personal stationery. Dear Emma, I've been flying for 23 years and they stopped teaching the Mr. Phillip code 15 years ago. My first instructor was old school. She made us memorize it just in case. I never thought I'd hear it. When you said those words, I almost couldn't believe my ears. You saved my life. You saved all of us. I think about you every single day. I think about how close we came and how one smart, observant, brave 12-year-old changed everything. I hope you fly again someday, and when you do, I hope I'm your flight attendant. Love, Sarah Chen. The FBI director himself invited Emma to Washington, D.C. for a formal ceremony. She stood in a room full of agents and officials, wearing a new dress her mother had bought specifically for the occasion, feeling very small and very young. The director shook her hand and said, Agent Martinez, your country thanks you. Emma blinked. I'm not an agent, I'm just... Today you are, he said with a warm smile. Honorary Junior Special Agent Emma Martinez, for services rendered to your country in the prevention of a major terrorist attack. They gave her a certificate, formal and official, signed by the director himself. They gave her a commendation medal, and they gave her something else, a badge, miniature but real, with her name engraved on it, Junior Special Agent E. Martinez. Her father cried, actually cried, standing right there in the FBI director's office, tears running down his face while his daughter received honors usually reserved for career agents. That night, back in their hotel room, Emma sat with the certificate, and the medal and the badge spread out on the bed in front of her. Do you regret it? Her father asked quietly, sitting beside her. All the attention, the interviews, everything changing. Emma thought about Michael Peterson, who would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. She thought about his manifesto, full of hate and anger and twisted logic that had convinced him murder was justice. She thought about the 189 people who had gone home to their families, the honeymoon couple who'd sent her a photo of themselves renewing their vows with a note, "We get to grow old together because of you." The mother with twins who'd written, "My girls turned 3 last week. They got to have a birthday because you spoke up." She thought about the letter from a school in Branson, Missouri, from teachers and students who'd been in their classrooms directly under Flight 447's flight path when it would have exploded. You saved our town. You saved our children. We will never forget you." "No," Emma said finally. "I don't regret it. I just wish I didn't have to do it, you know. I wish people like him didn't exist." "Me too, baby, me too." Emma leaned against her father's shoulder. "Dad, I have a question." "Anything." "All those dinners where you taught me about noticing things, about staying aware. Did you know? Did you know something like this might happen?" David Martinez was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "No, I just wanted you to be safe, to be smart, to pay attention to the world. Parents teach their kids to look both ways before crossing the street, right? This was the same thing, just different skills. I never imagined," his voice broke. "I never imagined you'd save 189 people before you were even old enough for high school." Emma smiled despite the heaviness of everything. "Does this mean I don't have to do my history homework when we get home?" Her father laughed, the sound wet with unshed tears. "Nice try, kid. Get your book." 3 months later, life had mostly returned to normal. Emma went back to school, back to walking Biscuit, who still limped slightly on his left paw, back to drawing in her sketchbook and hanging out with her best friend Maya. But some things were different now. The certificate hung on her wall in a frame. The badge sat on her desk where she could see it every day. And sometimes, when Emma walked through the mall or sat in a restaurant, people would recognize her and smile or give her a thumbs up or sometimes just mouth "thank you." Emma still noticed everything. She still paid attention to details others missed. But now she knew, beyond any doubt, that noticing mattered. 6 months after Flight 447, Emma's grandmother finally got her birthday visit. They rebooked the flight, same route, Denver to Orlando, and Emma's mother insisted on coming too. When Emma walked onto the plane, the flight attendant checking tickets did a double take. Oh my God, you're Emma Martinez." Emma smiled nervously. "Yes, ma'am." The flight attendant, a young woman, maybe late 20s, had tears in her eyes. "We learned about you in recurrent training. They're teaching the Mr. Phillip code again because of you, at every airline." She grabbed Emma's hand. Thank you for reminding us why we learn this stuff, why it matters." Emma flew to Orlando in seat 9B. She'd requested it specifically. The flight was uneventful, peaceful, exactly what a flight should be. She drew pictures of Biscuit in her sketchbook. She ate the whole bag of cookies the flight attendant brought her. She looked out the window at the clouds. And when her grandmother met her at the gate with a glittery "Welcome, Emma" sign and arms wide open, Emma ran into that hug and felt, finally, like maybe things really would be okay. That night in her grandmother's guest room in Orlando, Emma thought about everything that had happened. About fear and courage, about trusting yourself when everything in you screams to stay quiet, about how sometimes the smallest voices speak the loudest truths. And she thought about something her father had said, just before she'd gotten on the plane that morning. "Emma, what you did will ripple out forever. Every kid who hears your story and decides to speak up instead of staying silent, that's you, still saving lives. Every parent who teaches their child to trust their instincts, that's you. Every person who pays attention instead of looking away, you did that. One act of courage can change the world." Emma fell asleep that night thinking about ripples in water, how one stone thrown can create circles that spread out forever, touching shores the thrower will never see. She was 12 years old. She had saved 189 lives with 2 words and a code from the past. And somewhere, on planes all over the world, flight attendants were learning about Mr. Phillip again, remembering that sometimes the smallest passengers carry the biggest courage. Sometimes, even when you're just a kid in row 9, you can save the world. The end.